Welcome to our Create Design online demonstration. My name is Sophie.
And my name is Goran.
And today we are going to give you loads of insights about how to realize your knitwear ideas digitally. Creating exceptional knitwear designs demands more than just knowledge, it also needs powerful tools. That's where Stoll and Came On, two successful business units of the Kalmaya Group, jointly developed Create Design, a design software specially developed to realize your knitwear pieces digitally.
Whether you're interested in created knitted shapes and stitch simulations that can be used for 3D garment development, or you want to use your design projects to improve the communication with your suppliers, this online demonstration is for you. Throughout the 6 chapters, you will get a glimpse of the design and shaping tools of the software and learn how to apply them for creating your own digital knitwear design. So Sophie, what are we going to go through today?
So let's begin by exploring the Create Design user interface and witnessing the real-time stitch simulation, bringing your design ideas to life. Explore the stitch development process. Because our software updates in real time, you will be able to see a realistic simulation of the stitches which we design in our fabric preview. Dive into the world of digital and physical yarns, and let's discover the colorway generate function for crafting endless colorway combinations.
We'll also show you how to import and edit your artworks for creating vibrant Jacquard and intarsia designs. Then we will have a look into the shape and grading tool and discover how to create shapes for fully fashioned garments. And finally, you will learn how to transform your shapes into design projects and see how to export your DXF shapes, textures, and maps and seamlessly integrate them into any external 3D garment software.
So join us for this exciting glimpse into the world of Create Design and uncover the endless possibilities of digital knitwear development. Let's get started.
Let's start.
So to create a design project, we just double-click on the icon New Design Project. You can choose a name, select a machine gauge with the drop-down menu. Then we can select the dimension, either in stitches or in centimeters, as well as the stitch density. You also have the possibility to choose a start. Also with the drop-down menu, you find various kinds of starts, as well as selecting the height of your start. By clicking OK, we create our first knitwear design project. So Create Design offers a wide range of creating knitting patterns and shapes without being an expert in technical programming. But please note that the technical information for physical knitting is running in the background. So when you are ready, simply send your design files to your manufacturer, who can then seamlessly convert your vision into machine-ready file. To directly see the knitted outcome, let's start by opening the fabric preview. So the fabric view is a visual real-time support during the design process. It displays the technical symbols that you can see on the left side as digital stitches, and it's automatically updated once you change anything in your symbol view. So in order to get a better visual effect, I will change the color of my design, and I will set the default yarn to a 6-ply yarn, and I of course will explain later on how you can change the yarn settings on your own. When I zoom in, you see I have a much better visual effect of my stitches. By default, you can see I have a single jersey structure. I also can display the rear side by showing the back of my fabric, and you see the rear side of my knitted fabric. So let's create our first knitted samples. For that, I can choose from the drawing tool, our rectangular drawing tool, a different color and a needle action that you can find in the upper right corner. Let's say weir stitch with transfer. And I can draw directly in my symbol view. You can see how it updates in our fabric view. Let's zoom in so you can see the weir stitch and the front stitch. Draw a cycle as well. You have the possibility to activate the display in relation of stitch density. Usually when we measure the stitch density in 10 centimeters, there are more knitting rows in one wale than stitches in one course. And because of that, when you activate the display in relation of stitch density, you see that the cycle is more an oval and not a cycle anymore. Similar to the activation in our fabric preview, I can also activate the preview in our symbol view. And when I now draw a cycle, you can see that it's now completely a cycle and round. So let's continue with the stitch development. There are two main possibilities to design your structures. Either you can draw with the needle actions that you find in the upper right corner, or you can choose a stitch that you find in the library. Our library is called Knit Explorer. Let's first use the needle action to design our stitches. I can always create new patterns. On the left side you find the patterns. By clicking on the right mouse click, create new design pattern. Let's say I would like to create a 2x2 rib pattern. Therefore, I can select the 2x2 start, confirm with OK, open the fabric preview, and then I can just select one row in my start, copy and paste it in our entire design pattern. And when I zoom in, you can see that we have successfully created a 2x2 rib. Let's also create a double jersey. By default, you can see the front is front stitch and single jersey. And the back is the weir side of our stitch. If I want to create a double jersey, I can choose from the needle action front stitch, weir stitch, and just apply it in our entire design. And when I now show the back side of my fabric, I can see that it's the same as the front side, so we have successfully created a double jersey fabric. Because it's also possible to be more creative, and just play around with different front and weir stitch, different colors in your design pattern by using the drawing tools as well. So you can see how it directly updates and how you get your real-time simulation in your fabric view. So let's continue with the Knit Explorer. So that's our library. You find it in the left corner. And in the Knit Explorer, you also have different kind of structure, molds, and pattern elements. By default, you can see that there are basic knitting modes, ribs, pointels, arans, cables, and so on. So there are various structures that you can use just by dragging and dropping. Let's create a new design pattern, call it moss stitch. Moss stitch you find under basic knitting modes and moss stitch. Just select the stitch and apply it via drag and drop. When I zoom in, you can see now that the simulation automatically has updated. As I said, that there are various kind of stitches, let's say a 3x3 rib, and let's apply this to the rest of our pattern. Furthermore, there are not only structures, there are also pointels, arans, and cables. Let's create an aran as well using the library. Kind of arans can be found in the pattern elements. In the pattern elements, you have different jacquards, pointels, and arans. And let's open, for example, this aran and apply it to our design. Now, when I zoom in, you see that the distortion doesn't really look quite right. Therefore, we have a possibility to show the distortion view. When I zoom in now, the cable looks much more realistic. The color palette in Create Design contains 64 preset colors. Of course, it's possible to change the color value in Create Design and to create your own color palette. It's also possible to import file extensions for color palettes from Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, or Adobe InDesign. Let's start with digital yarns. Therefore, I open the Knit Explorer, our library. Under the folder Yarns, you find example of digital created yarns. And I will show you how to apply them on your design. The yarns are constructed according to the yarn type itself. That means, for example, yarns with different numbers of plies, or multifilaments, or frises, or melange, or chenilles, or moulines. So the application on our design, it's really easy. You just drag and drop the yarn. See how it directly changes in our fabric preview. Of course, you can also create your own yarns. Either you can create your yarns in the Knit Explorer itself or directly in your pattern with right mouse click, Create Yarn. Create a 2-ply So the first Information like composition, manufacturer, comment, and so on can be filled out, but doesn't necessarily have to fill out. What is important, we said we would like to create a 2-ply yarn. By default, we only have one individual thread. To create another thread, we just click on the plus button. Now we have 2 threads that are creating one yarn. I can define the twist, a higher or a lower twist, and the stitch geometry by percentage. That's actually creating thickness of our yarn. When I activate Use Preview Color, you see that I get the 2 colors, red and blue, in my preview, and in this case I have a moulinet. By setting the thread arrangement to manually, I can also create a melange by changing the thread arrangement. So it's really easy to create digital yarns. As well as creating digital yarns, you can also create colors of digital yarns. How you can do this? By just clicking on the plus, the small I, and then selecting the 2 colors that you want to create. Let's go back to my melange. Let's open a pattern with 3 different stripes. Beforehand, I constructed a 2-ply moulinet and a 2-ply yarn and twist, and I can just apply them via drag and drop to my striped pattern. When you zoom in, you can see the different combinations of yarns. Also, you can use the library and drag and drop different kind of yarns and see the outcome directly in your fabric preview. Starting with version 2.4 of Create Design, you can also work with scans of physical yarns as the basis for creating digital yarns. You can use a professional as well as a home scanner to scan your yarns. For a better result, I recommend a photo scanning mode and setting the resolution to a minimum of 300 dpi. You can either find the yarn scanning mode in your Knit Explorer, just create yarn from image, as well as directly in the pattern with right mouse click, create yarn from image. I created an example just with a small dot pattern, and you can see I already applied digital yarns. In this case, I applied a frotte. You can see there is my digital yarns in the background and all the parameters are set up. As well, and as in this case, a 6-ply yarn. So this is my digital yarn. I have, of course, the possibility to also scan in different kind of colored yarns, like in this case, a multicolored yarn, and apply it to my structure. Also just via drag and drop. Another example of a physical yarn scan is this one. So you can see even we can scan in hairy yarns and multicolored yarns, and we get a really good visual effect. Also printed yarns, it's possible to scan in printed yarns as well. So just for you to know, we will shortly offer you a small library of preset scanned yarns within the Knit Explorer. And also this feature is in constantly development, so keep an eye on a new generation and a new version, and we will constantly update the yarn scan feature. So for your design, you can generate, preview different colorways. I just created a really simple structure and I would like to create various colorways. Therefore, I can open the color scheme. I can drag and drop various colors, either digital or physical, and to my colorway generator. And then I can click through a shuffle mode. You can see the system automatically calculated 120 color combinations, and I can click through them and apply the ones I like. There are much more possibilities to refine your settings by clicking properties for your shuffle mode and predefine the kind of settings you want to shuffle through them. Once you make your preset selection, you can compare your colorways and also rate them. So in order to reduce the amount of samples to be knitted afterwards, you can use the colorway generator to reduce the amount of samples and only go with them that you really like.
There are two ways to import images in Create Design. To start, let's import an image through the Image Import tool. Once the pop-up window is open, you can then select the file that you want to import. This can be any type of image file, JPEG, PNG, BMP, and so on. And once the image is imported, there are a couple of settings that you can set for your image before you convert this to a design project. So first, we would like to reduce the size because this image is very big. So I would reduce it to, let's say, for example, 300 stitches in the width, and also keep the aspect ratio so that the height is adapted accordingly. In the right window, you can always see a preview of the image. So whatever you change inside the image will be displayed here on the right side. Now, when we have reduced the size, we would also like to reduce the number of colors. Let's say, for example, to 5. Preview will be updated. And once these two things are set, now we can create our design project by clicking on the icon. So now we have the image in the design project, and we can convert this to a Jacquard very easily. To do this, we select then convert this selection to a Jacquard. You can choose between different types of jacquards that are displayed here in the menu. For this example, we will use the twill jacquard. And once that it's selected, we can create our jacquard. Open the fabric view. Then apply a different yarn, or just change the yarn that we are currently using. And once we zoom in and display the backside, we can see that this is a jacquard that has a twill backside. Create design, you will find several design checks that help you to check specific knitting techniques from a technical aspect. First, I will show you the flow jacquard check, and then afterwards we'll have a look at the intarsia check. Let's see first how to use the float jacquard check. In this design, we already have graphic that it's made of several colors, but in one row we always have only two colors. And in this pattern, the jacquard technique is already applied. We can see that also if we open the fabric view and then display the backside of the fabric. Notice here that in the area where we have the jacquard applied, there are floats on the backside of the fabric. For this knitting technique, it's important to follow one rule, and that is that depending on the gauge, the float leg can be a maximum of 1 inch. For example, in the gauge 7, the float length can be a maximum of 7 needles. So depending on the gauge we are working with, we can do the technical check. Let's say, for example, first we select 7 as our gauge and check the file if it's correct. If everything is correct, then you will get the message that no jacquard with too long floats on the back are found, and that means that this design is suitable for the 7 gauge machine. But let's say, for example, if you want to check the same design for a different gauge, for the gauge 3, and then do the check again, we will get a different message that says that on the backside of the fabric there are floats that are too long. If you click on OK, then all of these areas that are longer than 3 needles will be highlighted with a purple color, and that means that you would have to change them if you want to use this particular design for the 3 gauge machine. The next check that we will have a look at is the intarsia check. So intarsia designs are also beloved with designers, but when working with this knitting technique, there's often a bit of uncertainty if the design is suitable for the knitting machine, if we have too many colors or color areas. So in Create Design, we have a special technical check for this knitting technique where we can check if the design is suitable for a particular knitting machine. The standard stole machines have between 16 and 32 yarn carriers, and actually the amount of yarn carriers is important to know if we can knit a certain intarsia design or not. In this design we have 5 different colors, but it doesn't mean that we only need 5 yarn carriers to knit this design. We can just click on the intarsia check that it's called how many yarn carriers, and then we'll have the information of how many do we need for the design. For this particular design we need 7 yarn carriers, so that means that this design would be suitable for any standard stole knitting machine. If the design requires more yarn carriers that are available on the machine, you can try to simplify the graphic and then do the check again and see if the simplified version can be knitted. Now let's have a look at the tool for creating shapes and grading. In Create Design, you can work with shapes in 3 different ways. First, you can import external DXF files that come from any 3D or 2D pattern making software. 2, you can use the templates that are available in the library. Or 3, you can create your own shapes. To start a shape project, we click on the icon that is called New Dimension Shape Project. And then in the pop-up window that appears, you can see on the left side the available templates. For example, in the library, there is a template for a set-in sleeve with a shoulder gore, a set-in sleeve with French shoulder, a raglan sweater, saddle shoulder, top, slip over, trousers, and a private template. With the private one, you can create shapes starting from scratch, so you can create your own shapes. Or we open the template, there are a couple of settings that we can define here. Like for example, we can define the type of neckline that we want to create, or we can define the position of the seam on the collar. We can also additionally set the stitch density for all of our shapes. And once all the parameters are set, when we click on OK, we will start the shape and creating tool. Here we have one main document window that is in the middle where your shape is displayed. Here we have one back part, one front part, one sleeve, and one collar. And on the left side, you will see the measurement tables where all the measurements for the shape are displayed. If you start working with the template, then you will see two different charts. The first one is for the measurements and the second one for the formulas. And these are already applied on your shape. All of these measurements can be easily changed. Like for example, if you just change the number in the chart. So for example, if we want to change the length, we just enter a new value. And when we click on enter, the shape will be automatically adjusted. In the top of the screen, there are different settings that you can set the properties of the shape, or you can use different drawing tools. For example, you can create a fabric piece. And once you create a new fabric piece, this one will be displayed always as a rectangle. And let's say on this fabric piece, we want to add a couple of construction points. In this case, we will use the tool for symmetrical shape points. So just by clicking on the shape, you can apply these construction points. And then you can easily move them around. Here, because they are symmetrical, when we move one on the one side, the other one is easily moved along with. And in this way, you can create, for example, a front part for a sweater. At the bottom of the screen, we also have a couple of different display options. Like for example, you can decide which measurements do you want to show, or you can also activate the stitch grid. With this, each of the stitches will be displayed as a separate pixel. We can also apply measurements to our shapes. So with this new fabric piece that we made, we can, for example, add a horizontal and add a vertical measurement by just connecting two different construction points. You can give a name to your measurement. And also define the length. Once the base size is finished, it can be used as a reference for the grading. We can take the example above where all our measurements are already applied. To create additional sizes, just click on the base size M in the blue box in the corner and select Add New Sizes. Let's say, for example, we want to add two sizes, S and L. And the grading can be done in two different ways. It can be either done in percentage. In this case, new sizes will be equally scaled by a certain percent, or with absolute numbers. In this case, you can enter the measurements from your worksheet manually in the measurement table on the left side. Let's select now the first option with percentages so that we can quickly see how new sizes will be displayed. When we confirm with OK, we can see that the added sizes are to be found in the measurement table on the left side. And if we want to see the sizes in the document window, we can just activate the grading view at the bottom. All of the different sizes are displayed, and we can shuffle between them by clicking on the sizes in the right upper corner. And the size that is currently selected will be highlighted with a black line, and all of the others will be highlighted with gray lines. Shapes created in the Shape and Grading tool can be easily converted into a design project and combined with yarns, structures, and colors. This shape that we have open here, we can easily convert it to a design project if we click on the Create Design Project icon. Before we convert it, we can decide if we want to import one or all fabric pieces, and also we can decide which sizes do we want to import. In this case, because we only have one size, we will import this size only. Now, when we have the shape into design project, we can move forward to place an image. So to combine this shape with a graphic. We saw before how we can use the image import tool. Now I will show you how to use the second option, which is suitable for images that are a BMP file. Once we have an image like that, so a graphic that can be also made in a different software, and we want to just import it and create design, we have the option to do it through the tool window with the pattern elements. So we can just select the image that we want to import, the BMP file, and once we import it, we can use it and place it on the shape. So now when we have the graphic and the shape combined, we can also open the fabric view, and we can use a different yarn in the fabric view. So in Create Design, we also have the option to import yarns. So in this case, I will use a yarn that I have previously scanned and for which I already generated different colorways. So by selecting the color, I can then drag and drop it into the fabric view. And once the yarns are applied, I would also convert the graphic into a Jacquard. So for that, just select the whole image, and from the selection, Jacquard. In this case, we will use the twill Jacquard. Once this technique is applied, we can then see the result in the fabric view. The same process we will do also for the front part and the sleeve. So we use the same graphic for different shapes. And once we have it placed, we can then move forward to exporting these images so that you can use them in a 3D software. Now, finally, let's have a look at how you can export the data from Create Design to use it in any external 3D software. The shape that we created beforehand can be exported as a DXF file, and this is the standard shape file that can be used in any 2D or 3D software. Besides the shape, you can also export the stitch simulation and texture maps. And there are two ways to export this from Create Design. The first is for export of individual patterns through the fabric view. So we can export this design as an image file, and we can set different parameters for the export. So you can decide between export of the entire pattern or a selected area. You can set then the export resolution and see the size of the pattern that you're exporting shown in stitches and in centimeters. So the standard resolution is 300, but this will generate images in high quality that will result in good 3D renders. However, this resolution will also generate large files, and in order to avoid having very large files, you can activate the image compression. So that means that the image will be exported with an equally good quality, but in a smaller size. Section, you can also define the type of the export. You can choose between a PNG, JPEG, and a TIFF file. And also decide if you want to export a U3M file or not. I would recommend that you always export as a PNG file, because this file already contains the information about the transparency inside. Here at the very end, we can also define what do we actually want to export. So we can export files from the front and for the back side of our design, and we can export different types of texture maps. First one is the base map, and this one contains the general appearance of the material as well as the color. The second one is the alpha map. This one can store information about transparent areas of a texture. But as I said, if you already export as a PNG file, this one will not be necessary. Then we have the normal map. This one can be used to fake texture depth of the digital material. And at the end, we can also export a displacement map for height details of a needed texture that can be authentically depicted in their plasticity. Once you press with OK, these files will be exported. Besides this type of export, we also have a second option. So that one is for a bundled export of several design patterns in a project, and can be reached through the render fabric piece option. So here on the left side, you can notice that we can decide between exporting one or all fabric pieces. And then the rest of the functions are quite similar. Here you can set the resolution, select the image format, optionally choose to export an alpha channel if necessary, or a U3M file. Then we can activate to export with distortions and with yarn texture that would be necessary, and also decide which of these maps do we want to export. When we confirm with OK, all of this will be exported bundled together. Once everything is exported, you can place them into one folder. So here we have the U3M exports of all our shape pieces. So for the back part, the collar, the front part, and the sleeve. We also have the DXF file that is exported from the shape and grading tool. And these are the files that you can import in any 3D software to create your 3D render. Here on this example, we can see the finished Jacquard sweater that we have created beforehand. As you can see here, all the fabric pieces are sewn together and the stitch simulation and the maps are placed onto the shape. Thank you for joining us today for our Create Design online demonstration. We sincerely hope that this session has provided you with a first introduction to our software and its main features. If you have any further questions or if you'd like to get a deeper insight into the capabilities of our software, please do not hesitate to reach to us. We are more than happy to assist you and arrange an exclusive demonstration.
To learn Create Design, we offer an online training at least 4 times a year. And you can also learn the software on our own e-learning program. All information about training dates and how to register can be found on our website. So thank you once again for your time and attention, and we look forward to the possibility of connecting with you soon.